been moments where it's been derailed. I think that it was very clear that they must, because we don't have details of the meeting either. The fact that nothing's really...
Do you think we should be told?
As journalists, I want to know what happened, obviously, and because there's a natural curiosity. But of course, it's the right thing that it stayed private. And it's so deliberate. The fact that the palace was the one controlling that information, nothing further was released. It's happened because the speculation was rife. We were all... As you say, we're in Birmingham with an enormous pack of journalists, and everyone was just asking each other, trying to find out whether this meeting was going to happen. So there was so much interest in it, and you can see why the palace then wanted to just confirm it's happened, give out nothing else. But I think the fact it came from them rather than the Sussexes was very deliberate.
It will come out eventually. Things always come out. I mean, I've never known any of these things over time. There will be details that emerge, whether it comes out in a book, or on a newspaper, but it will come out eventually.
Well, this is the thing. These things are not normally private because the people who were there, I'm talking about Harry and Meghan, then talk about them in books. They talk about, the meetings with after the Prince
Philip
talk about
it with
funeral.
their people.
They talk about it with their people. I mean,
Yeah.
they can't have it all. You can't. They've put so much of their interaction with the royal family into the public realm themselves, and then all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh, guys, this is a private family gathering."
They're not a couple that deal in privacy. But the reality, as Bronte was just saying, in this one, it was about trust. And if it had come from the Sussexes, it would come from Liam Maguire or whoever, we talk about the Sussex team, it's Liam basically in the UK. And if it had come from him, then it would have looked very bad, I think. So I think it needed to come from... when it did, it was announced, it was done on a WhatsApp from Toby and Andre.
Shock horror, everyone, there was WhatsApp groups. Yeah. I know people get very triggered by WhatsApp groups.
6:42, but the information came through at 6:42, and that was it, that they're there, that they've been and seen it. And I thought Highgrove was a good choice. It's a private residence, even though the King rents it off the Duchy of Cornwall, so technically it's William's house. But it was better that it was done that way. Look, we don't know what's happened, but I should imagine the one thing that I think is very significant in all of this, given that Harry was not overly critical of the King, but he was very critical of Queen Camilla, was that she was there to support the King, she was also there to witness what was said, and so that they are covering each other there, because Meghan and Harry have got a tendency really to try and get their own way and what they need. And I'm sure it would have been better with Camilla there and more difficult for them to almost push the King. He was a very kind man, a gentleman, I think, into a corner. And so she was, Diana used to call her the Rottweiler. Well, she was there to protect the King from whatever he might have, when Harry might have said, "Oh, look, I'm down 30 million this week," or it is after a court case, any chance of any more money. I'm sure none of that was discussed. And one thing I think would have been all the focus would have been on the children, which would have made it a lot easier to have that meeting, because a lot of stuff would have remained unsaid. We've all been in family situations where there have been squabbles, but if there's young kids involved, all the adults withdraw and they just let the kids play, and it's a lot easier.
We've got to remember,
buffer, yes.
Yeah, we've got to remember that this is all about
innocent children. And I think the one thing I found a bit unsavoury actually in all of this over the last week or so is some of the vitriol from the morons on Twitter and X, whatever it's called, attacking children. About this. These children are completely innocent, and nothing, whatever's been said, it's nothing to do with them. They're just kids seeing their grandfather, and they're not some special, sort of tool for Harry and Meghan. End of the day, they're kids seeing their grandfather. And I think we should sometimes remember that and show a little bit of class when it comes to children, anyway.
But while Charles and Camilla saw Archie and Lilibet, we didn't see Meghan at all. Do you think that was wise? Do you think that was deliberate to keep them away from us?
Well, she never seems to turn up when Harry's in trouble, does she?
It was such a different week in regards to what we saw of the rest of the family than what was originally planned, obviously, because we discussed this in the lead up. Harry wanted them all to be there. Meghan was going to be taking part in the public activities with him, and that changed so dramatically, obviously, because of the security. It's funny when we're recapping it, there are so many flashpoints of problems along the way. There is so many chapters of this, a handful of days that he was here, but so many things happened. So it was obviously very deliberate that they stayed away. I did think, and it came down, I think, boiled down largely to Harry's concerns over security. But I did think that after Harry had that court case disaster on the day one of his activities. I did have the thought watching him, especially when he got on stage and he put on, he had the mask on, but he would have been so rattled. I was thinking it would have been a good opportunity for her to be there with him as that was happening. He just seemed he cut a very solitary figure when it was in the middle of all of this drama unfolding. I just thought maybe she should have been there for that then.
But she never supports, it's not good for her brand, being next to someone who's just lost.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying exactly, but as a husband and wife, I had the thought, I was thinking it would have been nice.
Oh, they are married, you're all right. Yeah,
do you not think it was part of the deal? It was almost like, you're going to have this meeting, but that Meghan brings a lot of, headlines. Meghan just stay out, don't get photographed, and that's part of the deal that they would meet the children.
Well, I think that's always been sort of the core of this entire trip and bringing them over here, because it's obviously a big deal for them to come here, again, with Harry's concerns about security. So it was always about the kids meeting the king. I did wonder earlier in the week, with all the drama that was going on with the palace back and forth, and then obviously with the briefing between the palace with Buckingham Palace, whether they were going to stay there or not. I did wonder whether this would all happen, particularly after Harry's statement on Tuesday, the one you mentioned earlier. There was so much drama early on in the week. I wondered if the entire meeting with the king would be derailed.
Well, so we had all the drama, which we spoke about in depth last week, and it was a dramatic first couple of chaotic, I think we described it, the first couple of days. But also the palace were weary and wary. They made that be known, that they were weary and wary about the circus. The king's patience snapped over the farce with Buckingham Palace. So what changed?
Well, I think that we realised they had a venue in Highgrove where they could come to some sort of deal, if you like. Where the bottom line is, it would look very bad if the children were in England and they didn't see the grandfather. It would have also possibly been one of the last opportunities. We don't know how long the king has got. He's living with cancer, and he has been busy meeting people along the way. He saw Michael Fawcett again the other day. There's all sorts of things going on where he wants to, have opportunity to square things off. And I think it would have been wrong for him not to see the grandchildren. But that said, they have played the palace, Meghan and Harry, and I think they forced their arms by saying, we were told, Harry said that, in all this, he finds the UK unsafe. Was Portugal any safer? I mean, all this baloney about some, 6 or so terrorist attacks. I mean, people in the intelligence services that I've spoken to think it's completely fantasy. It's complete and utter nonsense. It doesn't exist.
Hello, my beautiful Sussex gang. I hope you're all doing amazing wherever you're watching from. If you're passionate about separating headlines from reality and looking beneath the surface of the royal narrative, you've come to the right place. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and join the conversation, because today's discussion is one of the most revealing we've had in a long time. The panel wanted viewers to believe this was another week of Harry and Meghan creating chaos. They described Harry's visit as a circus, a soap opera, a distraction. They questioned his security concerns, mocked his character, suggested hypocrisy over privacy, and even entertained the idea that Harry and Meghan somehow played the palace through their own children. On the surface, it sounds like a devastating case against the Sussexes. But here's what struck me. The more they spoke, the more they unintentionally dismantled their own argument. Let's start with the biggest accusation of all, that Harry and Meghan turned a charity visit into a media circus. Think about that for a second. The panel itself acknowledged that Harry travelled to Britain primarily for Invictus Games events, well-child engagements, and Scotty's Little Soldiers, organisations he has supported for years with remarkable consistency. They openly admitted that those charitable commitments were real and meaningful. So here's my question. If Harry came to support veterans, sick children, and bereaved military families, then who actually transformed that visit into endless palace drama? Was it Harry standing on stage with veterans? Or was it the commentators, newspaper headlines, television panels, and royal correspondents who spent days dissecting every rumour about where he stayed, who he met, who briefed whom, and whether Meghan appeared in public. That's the irony no one on that panel seemed willing to acknowledge. They complained about the noise while contributing to the noise. They lamented that Invictus was overshadowed while spending almost their entire discussion overshadowing Invictus themselves. That's not Harry creating a circus. That's the media choosing which tent to pitch. And that's a distinction that matters. Then came the discussion about security. One panellist dismissed Harry's concerns as fantasy and baloney. Another suggested they were driven by paranoia rather than genuine risk. Yet something important was missing from that conversation. Evidence, not opinion. Evidence. Harry's disagreement has never simply been that Britain is unsafe. His legal dispute has focused on how decisions about his publicly funded security were made after he stepped back from royal duties. Whether people agree with his legal arguments or not, reducing a complex security dispute to mockery avoids engaging with the substance of the issue. Remember who Harry is. He's someone whose mother died after being relentlessly pursued by photographers. He's someone whose family has repeatedly faced documented threats over many years. That doesn't automatically mean every security request should be granted. But it certainly explains why he approaches the issue differently from commentators sitting safely in television studios. Understanding someone's perspective isn't the same as agreeing with every conclusion they reach. It's simply acknowledging context. The panel also criticised Harry and Meghan for supposedly demanding privacy while engaging with the media. Let's unpack that. There's a world of difference between wanting privacy for your family and refusing all public engagement. Harry has spoken publicly about institutional issues, mental health, military service, and the press. That doesn't automatically mean every family meeting should become public property. In fact, what I found fascinating was that the panel itself acknowledged Buckingham Palace controlled the announcement of the King's meeting and deliberately kept the details private to preserve trust. If that's true, then doesn't that suggest everyone involved, including the palace, recognised there should be boundaries? Isn't that exactly what privacy is supposed to look like? Perhaps the most uncomfortable moment came when the discussion shifted to Archie and Lilibet. Some commentators suggested Harry and Meghan had somehow used their children to force a meeting with the king. That's a serious allegation. But notice something remarkable. Only moments later, the very same discussion reminded viewers that Archie and Lilibet are innocent children who should never become targets in adult disputes. I completely agree with that. Children should never become ammunition in royal debates. But if we truly believe that, then we should also be careful not to assign motives to parents without evidence. A grandfather meeting his grandchildren can simply be what millions of families experience every day, a family moment. Turning that into strategic manipulation requires proof, not speculation. And speculation is not evidence. Finally, let's talk about the repeated claim that Harry is a man-child. I always find labels fascinating because they're often used when arguments become weaker than the emotions behind them. Throughout the same discussion, the panel acknowledged Harry's work with Invictus, recognised the significance of bringing the Games back to Birmingham, and admitted the event remains one of his greatest achievements. That's quite a contradiction. We're told he's immature, yet we're also reminded that he founded and continues to champion one of the world's most respected sporting events for wounded service personnel. Those two pictures don't fit together nearly as neatly as critics would like. Here's what I took away from this entire discussion. The story isn't simply about Harry and Meghan anymore. It's about how narratives are constructed. The same actions can be framed as compassionate or manipulative. The same family reunion can be portrayed as healing or scheming. The same charity visit can be celebrated or dismissed depending on the lens through which it's viewed. That's why it's so important to listen carefully, not just to what is said, but to what is quietly acknowledged along the way. Because in trying to criticize Harry and Meghan, this panel repeatedly admitted facts that complicated their own conclusions. And that's what I believe viewers should notice. Not because Harry and Meghan are beyond criticism. No public figure is. But because fair analysis demands consistency. If we're going to hold them accountable, let's do it with evidence. If we're going to praise them, let's do that with evidence too. The Sussex story deserves more than headlines. It deserves honesty. And sometimes the loudest criticism reveals more about the critics than the people they're criticizing.